What's up, guys? I am super excited to bring you live my favorite human on Instagram. And if you've seen the interviews, I never said this. I've never said this. Brendan Kyle Goodman is my favorite guy and human, really. And Instagram is the person that has been inspiring me, not just this year, particularly this year, but really over the last 3 years in ways that I don't think he even knows or understands, and is one of those people in your life that you meet and that have a huge, tremendous impact in who you are as a human, and they don't even know. So when he said yes to come in here and share space with me, I felt privileged for the opportunity, and you are going to be privileged to learn about him, who he is, what is about, what he shared, because he's a rare, rare, rare human being.
Oh, what an introduction. Thank
Good. Yeah,
you.
I've been like over the years, I've been messaging you here and there. I'm like, dude, you don't understand how you're impacting me.
Oh,
But it's not like I don't say this. Like people that I watch this, I don't say this, and it's true because you are able to speak to some truth, some social truth, some historical truth, while at the same time, like I feel like you're speaking to me. Like you're very into your identity, of who
yeah.
you are, standing up for queer people, standing up for Black people. But at the same time, you have this ability to make me feel like you're speaking about me. Like I feel there, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's a tremendous talent that keeps getting me. Like the stories about your grandmothers, your stories about shame, and your stories about standing up for yourself and your
Yeah.
career and everything is just and even about humanity and your activism. You have like this way of really allowing people to feel called in and awaken and say, hey, take this shit seriously,
Mm.
um, but at the same time from a very human stand that moves me deeply in my heart. So
Yeah,
I'm so
thank you.
grateful. So
Thank
grateful.
you. I
Everybody
appreciate
go check out Brendan on Instagram. Casey's gonna put up his Instagram link right now, and I want you to follow him because he's incredible. He also has two amazing podcasts.
it.
I knew about do the work part, but I didn't know
Yeah.
about the Black Fox one. I mean, I've seen it on Instagram, but I was following that one, and they're both. I got a chance to listen to some of the episodes, and so you're awesome. Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
it's not like a lot of a gassing you up, but
I love it. What a way to start a Friday.
deal with it. Deal with
Yeah.
it. So where are you at in December 2020? Where are you at with your feelings of this year ending and all the things that happened this year? And for the people that are watching and they're struggling with the heaviness of this year, right? Because I think there is this beautiful feeling that says, oh, I can't wait to be 2021 and this thing to be over.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, if we do not, it's not that January 1st is going to arrive and things are magically going to be okay and our weight is going to be lifted unless we actually do the work to release
hmm
that heaviness, right? So where are you at with all that? How do you feel about that?
How do I feel about it? I am, today's kind of my last day of formal work. I've still, I write on a TV show and I do some other stuff in podcasting, and so I've been able to continue working remotely. But today is going to be my last day, and I want to take the next 2 weeks specifically to just kind of reflect, and that's kind of what I want to kind of how I want to go into the new year is in full curiosity and reflection and introspection, because obviously so much has happened. So much has happened, obviously with the pandemic, obviously with racial justice, and just being in isolation and families and all this stuff that just feels compacted. And I want to be really intentional with how I process that. So I am feeling hopeful. I think that the election was a really big hurdle to get over. Obviously, the work is not done, it's only just begun, but that felt like such a really big tent pole to get over. And because has that, worked out in our favor. I'm feeling hopeful and optimistic, but also, there's a lot of work to be done still, and so that's overwhelming. And so I think it's important to just kind of like intentionally rest, intentionally reflect, and intentionally start to like be like, okay, what are my questions for 2021? I think so
Mhm.
often, especially with the new year, it's all about these are my goals and this is what I'm gonna do. And obviously we all did that for
Yeah.
2020. And 2020 was like, no, different plans for you. So I don't want to do that. I think I still have the trauma from doing that at the end of
Yeah.
2019. But I do want to just, think about how I can be more intentional and more impactful, and how I can continue doing the work that's less about my individual goals and more about like the country, the world. What are the
Mhm.
things that we can be supporting? What are the ways that we can be changing in our households to make sure that we're affecting change outside of our households as well?
Yeah. That's really, I mean, and I think that connects a lot. I remember reading that one article that you spoke about having an abusive relationship with your career, and I
Hmm.
related that to that a lot. And what you're saying to me is acting, choosing something different, meaning not having that abusive relationship with your work, because
Yeah.
even if people, it's too easy to think that people either do it just for the right thing or just for the wrong thing. I think there's a lot of
Hmm.
shades of why we do our art, whether our art is activism or a mixture of activism, acting, writing, speaking, writing, whatever it is that you do. And I think that there's a tendency to believe that people either do it for the intention of doing good in the world or for the intention or boosting their ego. And
Hmm.
I think there's like so many shades in between, and to be more intentional in that is to really allow yourself to connect your worth to your stuff independently of that, and then allowing all those projects that you do to just be a natural expression of your being, coming from a
Yeah.
desire to just expand who you are rather than prove who you are. And
Yes, I love
feel
that.
like in the way that you are speaking, in that groundness that I hear in your voice and in your pace and in your thoughts that you're delivering, I feel there's a lot more of that, a lot more of Brendan being enough in Brendan, and then
Yeah.
allowing whatever needs to come out of Brendan to be a natural expression of that, not something that needs to happen in order to prove that
Yeah.
it's good enough there. And I think that's very, very special today. That's what we need more. Because I think as we isolated more this year, there's even a backlash of feeling like, our life, what people know and see of our life is just the projection of that, what we share on social media, what we say that we accomplish, what we post. So there's
Hmm.
really has turned into that, and there is such a need, I think, for doing the opposite of like shutting the curtain down for a moment and grounding back in. So I'm
Yes.
yeah. By the way, guys, Brandon is the man that introduced me to meditation. Because I find that like I'll never forget. I was partnering with your husband on that meditation day,
Yeah.
and I remember walking in the room saying, I can't meditate."
Yes.
It's so hilarious to me because now meditation is such a huge part of my business as well, not just of what I do in my practice. That
Yeah.
how things can just like quickly,
Such a game
radically.
changer, I think. Meditation is such a game changer because it's such a thing that, even I grew up with a grandmother who was a minister. So she would pray all the time. And then my mother would meditate. And it always looked really boring and like, what are you doing? And like being quiet for an hour sounds really hard. And then, as I got into it, I just kind of learned that meditation is whatever you want it to be. It's not about, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to look, I think we're trained to think it looks one way, which is like legs crossed, very yoga, a gong playing in the background, which is beautiful, and that can also be. But a meditation could also be dancing for 10 minutes before everyone wakes up, like putting your headphones on and dancing for 10
Which,
minutes.
by
Like,
the way, guys, that's what Brandon did. That's why I
yes,
meditate.
yes.
He had us move, and we were dancing, and then one was supposed to lead and the other was supposed to follow and looking
Yes.
live, and then it was the opposite. So that's kind of like how it's like, oh, I don't remember what you called it. Something like with
It was
movement.
like a mirroring exercise, a
Yeah,
mirroring movement.
it was
Yeah.
it was just deep, but at the same time, it was allowing body movement to become an instrument for meditation. So
Yes.
I remember that for me was a game changer, and
I'm so
like,
glad. I'm so glad.
remember your husband, the poor guy who was coupled with me. I'm like, I can't meditate, dude. So I don't know what you're gonna do, but and he's so sweet, like
Uh,
man. Yeah, I mean, for
he's
sure.
super support. He's very supportive, but he also, he's also had trouble meditating. And I used to talk to him because he loves nature. He loves hiking, and I was like, "That's a meditation. Like going on a hike, by yourself and like being in nature. If that's what you love to do, then that's a meditation."
Anything that really is a path back into the most grounded and solid part of you, where the inner dialogue somehow gets to slow down because shut down
Yeah,
possible. It's worth it, and I think it's a huge focus that we should be putting at the end of the year as we move into the new year, in order to release this heaviness and really understand where we're standing in it, right? What is
yeah.
our movement in it? And I love that you're bringing up your grandma, because I think I would have loved to meet your grandmother.
She was a dream.
My favorite thing you ever posted, which it explains for the first time, and I want the audience that's going to watch this to understand it. So I'll ask you to explain it again.
Yeah,
Your grandma, your explanation of what your grandma used to tell you gave me a first clear visceral understanding of what it means when we say it's either this or something better, right?
yeah,
I heard that a million times. I mean, I heard that from Wayne Dyer. I heard that from Marianne Williamson. I heard that
yes,
from Gabby Bernstein. I heard it a million times, and he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, it's that or something better." And when you explained it, because your grandma used to tell you this, right? Your
yes,
grandma was an incredible woman, uh,
yes.
who really, she was a minister. She did a lot of other
Mhm.
things before. She used to drive, I think, drive a bus and do.
Yes, she's driving a bus, she's a bank teller, she was a teacher, she did all these things, but when she passed away, she was a formidable minister. And, she used to, like, wake up at, like, 4 in the morning and do prayer circles and on calls and, like, then go to the church, and all she was insanely, um, talented and gifted and good at, really bringing the best out of people. But she would always say, when you pray for this or something greater, or this or something better. And,
Mhm.
again, growing up, you're like, yeah, 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 cool, cool, cool. But like, I definitely want this thing that I'm
That you
that
can
I'm
make
going after. Yeah, if it's better, like
it
dope. But like, I want this. And so, but like what I finally understood, and this was maybe 2.5 years ago, I had quit my job at Flywheel, and I was going to go to Equinox. And I had this like, and then I got cast in Modern Love while I was doing my finishing up at Flywheel. And I had this like revelation that, oh my goodness, I was really strict and rigid about my dreams. It had to look a certain way. It had to feel a certain way. It had to be a certain way. And so I kind of liken it to, like painting a massive piece, and it's like it's drawn out in Sharpie, and then you paint it in and there's no movement, as opposed to really sketching out what you want and then allowing life to paint it in for you, which means that things can be erased and things can change and things can shift. And now you're really going with the flow, because it's like, if I were stuck on what I wanted my life to look like, what I thought I wanted my life to look like, I wouldn't be writing on Big Mouth. I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be doing all these things that really allow me to be my full self. I have a career right now that is built on me being who I am, which is Brandon Kyle Goodman, who's Black and queer and an only child and married. Like, I get to be myself, whereas the career I was trying to create was not that. And so it just reminded me, oh,
That's what you thought you should want,
what I
right?
thought I should want, which is also, to your earlier point, really rooted in proving yourself, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of external validation attached to it. And when you're on social media, you're like, oh, I should have this, I should do this, I should be this, as opposed to really being like, okay, well, what do I want? Like, what are the things that moves me if no one else was around and no one else had an influence? Like, what would I actually want? And
Mhm.
how would I go about it? And is there a world in which I can acknowledge that I've only been here for 33 years, so I don't know the full majesty of what this life can do. So is there a world in which something greater could actually happen that I couldn't even imagine? And the answer is absolutely. I mean, the evidence of our life always shows that, like, greater things are able to happen, things that you didn't even imagine can happen. I mean, you talk about you, right? Like, you didn't think you were gonna meditate and then, like, create a
Yeah.
whole business around it, and look at you, like, that was not a part of your quote unquote plan. And it's like,
Absolutely
yeah,
not. It was not.
yeah, which is why I'm like, throw out, don't, like, have your blueprint, like, like, have like your steps, like, know that I want to do this or whatever, but then allow, life to kind of get a chance to play in there, get a chance to paint for you, so that you can really go with the flow of life as opposed to going against it, because that's where the suffering is, right? Like the trying to make the thing happen the way you want it to happen. I always say, if you don't know exactly what you want to happen, or you're like working on releasing that, just think about how you want it to feel. So, like, if I think about my career or my life as a whole, I say, like, I want it to feel joyous. I want it to feel peaceful. I want to be happy. I want to be able to take care of myself and my family. There are truly no specifics about what's going to make that happen, but it's just like, I know that this is what I want it to feel like. Because the
Mhm.
other thing that I think always happens too is that we accomplish our goals. Sometimes people accomplish their goals and they're miserable because they forgot about how do you want to feel. So now you got the dream job that was a part of your master plan, but it's a toxic work environment, or like you're overworked and you don't see your kids, all this stuff. So it's like, you can't, there has to be a little more space
For
for
how I wanna
great.
feel that for sure. I have a friend
Yeah.
of mine, she's actually a coach and an author. Her name is Christine Hassler, and she defines that expectation hangover. And I love that term.
Yes.
That feeling like that you either get that you have this expectation of getting something and that you don't, or you have this expectation of getting something, you do get it, but you expect that when you get there, you'll be feeling in a certain way. And it's like you,
Yes.
and then your whole world is crashing because you realize that your Sharpie drawn blueprint
Yes.
is not nearly as exciting as you believe.
Yeah. Well,
So
you're not, when you're thinking about like that master plan, oftentimes I will say for myself, that master plan was also not necessarily created with me by myself. It was like my mother's dreams for me, the community's dreams for me, what I thought I should be, right? It's
that,
all external as opposed to ever asking, well, what do I really want? Which is why I say, like, how do you want to feel? Because then when I go out for that interview for that dream job, I'm approaching that differently because I also know that I want to be happy. So
yeah.
now I'm going to ask different questions, right? I'm going to approach those meetings differently because I have, like, I'm inside of this as well. I'm not some external surface version. This is my life. And I think we have to really acknowledge our life as a whole. So not just the accomplishments, but you have to live inside of it. So you want it to feel good.
I think it's such a much more empowering position and such a good advice as we look into 2021, into
Mhm.
the new year, as to more how do we want to feel in the new year rather than
Yeah.
which goals, which smart goals do we want to accomplish, right? I always
Yeah.
tell my clients it's so much better to have a vision than a goal because the vision is just like this more abstract um, idea of where you want to go. Then you make a plan to get to that vision, but it's also open for
Yes.
detours, right? Or for new exploration or to find out who you discover. Because sometimes you may start on a path and
Yeah.
understand that although I'm good at this, I really don't want this. Maybe I should try something else. And it comes
Yes.
trial and error. And Brandon, guys, like he is very successful right now, but he always shares when you go on his Instagram, he had 12 years, right? 12
So many years, yes.
years, you know, things and not feeling like it was going anywhere before he got like this really big break that allowed him to feel like, oh, yes, I'm part of something I love. I'm doing something I love. I can cultivate my art. So I think it's just so important to the sooner we get into that wagon of how I want to feel, rather
Yeah.
than what I want to do, the sooner we get into a fulfillment, into a position that makes us fulfill, because it's so easy. I see it for myself. I constantly to bring myself back,
Yeah.
needing to prove the the expectation of reaching certain milestones in my
Mhm.
business, in my relationships. It's always like I always have to pull back and say, okay, refocus. Whenever you go there, is not a place that brings you fulfillment. It's not a place that brings you happiness.
Yeah, we're a culture, I think, as a world, as a society, we value success and we don't value the journey of it. And a friend of mine used to say, the journey is the goal. And I wrote that down on a post-it and it's literally in front of me. And it's like, oh yeah, that's important to remember that like the ups and the downs, the failures, they're a part of it. Like I've lost jobs, I've been fired from things and thought the world had ended. And in reality, I was being built for something. I was, my empathy was being deepened. My skills were being sharpened so that when I could get to whatever that milestone is, I'd be able to hold on to it. I'd be able to cultivate it and grow it and bring other people with me. And so often we think that failure, oh my God, I failed, I failed. And it's like, no, you didn't. This is a part of the journey. And the journey is the goal. Like, don't worry about that like final moment. It'll never be enough. That's the other thing. I fully believe when you get to that thing, you're probably gonna want something else after that. So you might as well just enjoy the journey and learn as much as you can in this lifetime.
Which brings me to another thing that you always share that I think it's so important, which is the need to normalize the discomfort of things, right? I think
Mhm.
itself, it's built on this, maybe that's my interpretation of it, but on this desire to normalize conversation that are uncomfortable. And a lot
Yes.
of what you share, for me, the way I relate to it so much, and the way why I always feel like you're talking to me, um, even when you're making a post about queer people, I feel like you're talking. I feel you. I understand. What I relate to is the discomfort and the need to
Mhm.
normalize the discomfort, and we all feel that discomfort.
Yeah,
The,
we do.
the journey is the discomfort, right? The discomfort
Mhm.
zone is where the magic happens. The uncomfortable conversation is the magical conversation that brings change, the needed conversation. The
Yes.
that's like something that the need to normalize that and to be vulnerable in that and to recognize this moment of shame, of misunderstanding, of not having handled something properly, of not having lived up to something, or having hurt someone with our action or our thoughts
Yes.
or beliefs. I think those are the ability to have that uncomfortable moment is something that is so magical. And one thing I try to do as a mother, I have two boys, is I always try to stop myself from going to make it all okay.
Yeah.
There's this need as a parent that you want to be, oh, and everything is good. No. Why would
Yeah.
I rub them from that edge, right? That
Mhm.
why would I try to teach my two boys that life it's a journey without edge, without discomfort, that
Yeah.
they're somehow made to live in a world where things go smoothly. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah,
that
it's a chance like, there's a chance to I actually just watched a video where somebody was talking about, wealth and, like, her great-grandfather was, like, left her grandfather $500,000, and then when her grandfather passed away, he lived in a trailer, and her point was that her great-grandfather never taught, her grandfather about the ebbs and flows of money, just kind of gave him the money, but never taught him about it. And that to me is a larger point of like, sometimes we try to shield and protect our kids and each other, as opposed to saying, no, like sometimes shit goes wrong. And let's talk about that so that you know how to handle that. So you can see all the good stuff, but that's not the only thing that happens. As you're saying, like, I want you to know that life also has an edge. Like, and sometimes you might go over that edge, but how do you climb back up? Like, that is so valuable and so important to start to build, I think, as a kid. And my mother did that for me as well, as a single mother. She really and like her only child or only boy, it was like, this is what it is, boo. Like, I was joking with somebody that she told me that Santa didn't exist like after like when I was 6 years old. She's like, no, I buy it. Like, just so you know, like, which is controversial. Like, maybe wait till I'm 8 or 9.
Of that conversation, because now I have a 4-year-old, right? Who's like,
Yes.
come on, like really, Santa. And I have a 4-year-old. I'm like, don't ruin it.
Don't ruin it for him. Don't ruin it for him.
So there's that very
Yes, it's like, please let it be. But, like, I'm not saying you should tell your kids that Santa doesn't exist, but it's like, oh, I'm going to share with you, and as far as your baby brain can handle, but I'm going to share with you the tough moments that happen in my life as well, so that that it's possible to persevere. So that, like, like, I think there's this image for all of us, whether it's parents or us on Instagram or social media, where we only want to show the perfect. We only want to show when things are beautiful. And it's not that, like, listen, I don't live for you're never going to see me on Instagram, like, showing you when I'm in the middle of a storm or like I'm just like like I'm going to process and go to therapy and whatever, but I'm going to share what happened, because I think it's important people know that, like, things aren't always perfect. Like, my husband and I go through stuff. We're an interracial couple in the middle of a racial reckoning. He's white, I'm black. Like, come on. Like, there are things that we had to work through and get over. And so I want to share what we learned from that, so that it's not always like this picture perfect. Like, the edge is important. We all experience it. And for
But I
some
think it's
reason,
important what you said, though, because here's the big thing. You said you share it once you process it, because one
Mhm.
issue is sharing it when you're triggered. When you're
Yeah.
activated and you're sharing your trauma, you're coming from a place of messy, unprocessed emotion, and you're risking to activate somebody else as well. It is, I don't think
Mhm.
it's helpful. I think this is like something that's why I interrupted you, because it's this thing, I see it all the time.
Yes.
You want to have your tools, your self-healing tools, your therapy, your session, whatever it is, and then you want to share coming from a place of having processed things. Not
Yes.
undigested emotion is not safe, I think, for the,
Mhm.
and is not safe for who's watching, especially in this moment that we're living, where we're all hyperactivated, right? I think
Yeah.
this pandemic and the political climate and the divisiveness of the country has everybody hyperactive, and
Yeah.
we're all reawakening old childhood trauma in some ways or another.
Always.
We need to normalize the emotion and normalize the conversation. There needs to be a lot of work done, like professional work, like help, serious help,
Yeah.
to process something and then bring it to the conversation. And I think that's why I love your podcast so much, and I love what you do so much, because you're talking about real shit. You're calling out on people, but I don't feel like you're calling people out coming from a place of unprocessed, undealt with emotion, right? There's
Yes.
got to be a certain level of certain things that just are unacceptable, so they're never going to be digested,
Mhm.
but they're not things that, like, you're coming out of a storm and just vomiting it into people. And I think that's why people can actually hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I always, Queen Oprah, I always say, like, what's your intention? And so for everything that I do, I'm always asking, what's my intention? Because, I do think, and especially this year with so many emotions, I've always said, like, listen, especially for Black people, like, say whatever the fuck you got to say whenever
Yeah.
you got to say it. At the same time, for me and the work that I do, I also want you to take away something. And if I haven't processed it, there's nothing for you to take away, or not. That's not may not be true, but I don't know what the takeaway is. You might get your own takeaway, but I feel exposed in that because it's less to do with other people, more so than when you're being public with that stuff. Now people get to have an opinion, and if I'm
Mhm.
still healing from it, or I haven't, or gotten a grapple over it, now other people get to insert themselves in
Yeah.
my stuff, which I'm still working through. And so that makes it harder for me to work through it,
Yeah,
which is why
they're
I
both
think,
very important. There's a moment I think that is just about expression, and there's a place for just about expression or voice
yes,
that's needed and that's important,
yes,
necessary. But then there's a place from education, and like the
yeah,
education, the building, the change needs, I think, that groundness that you're bringing to
yeah.
people and those things that I think it's so important. By the way, if Casey is gonna can post it again, I want you guys to check out this podcast, Do the Work. Um,
Yes.
I
Wherever you get your podcast, it's on Apple, it's on Spotify, same with Black folks.
amazing. Like it's really having conversation about individual. It's having interracial conversation about best friends who are suddenly finding themselves facing emotion that they hadn't planned to face together, and
Mhm.
making a conversation that it's uncomfortable, but normalizing it in a way that is going to make you think, but most is going to make you hope in your heart, because the
Yeah.
truth is we're here for that, right? The truth is we're here to become more human. So becoming more human is not just going to your yoga class. Becoming more human, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But becoming more human means really allowing an awareness, a deeper awareness, a deeper consciousness of humanity, meaning
Yeah.
humans around us, to become part of our soul, right? Our soul connection. So I really advise you to check out this podcast because it's amazing, and
Thank you.
it's just so pleasant to listen to. As you can see, he's such a handsome man. Yeah, I love. It was so funny because once Brandon is very outspoken about being queer and about the black identity and the queer identity. He's very outspoken about it. He has posts with high heels. He has posts, and then he said, "I can't believe this woman didn't know I was gay." And I remember responding to him. It's like, it's not that it's not clear, is that I think it's so intriguing to listen to him, and he has such a presence that it's so easy to tune out of the other stuff, tune out
Mm,
of like what we normally identify as identity, right? If I listen
yeah.
to someone or I'm watching somebody perform and I'm taken by that performance, I forget about their things,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
their
You see
feature.
you hopefully are more focused on their humanity,
Yeah, you
you
just
know?
the content, right? The content
Yeah.
takes over the thing, and it's not because the person is not, standing in their truth. It's just like that the human that's watching you connects to that element, and the rest is just full secondary.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm so thankful. I think my biggest takeaway here, and the one for you guys, and I'll have Brendan see if there's anything else he wants to leave you for 2021, for us to help us release this heaviness of this year, is really to learn how to embrace how we want to feel more than what we want to do,
Mm,
and to start thinking that even if you don't know what you want to do, it's not a big deal as long as you focus on how you want to feel. How
mhm.
you feel is going to allow you to enter into any situation with more presence, knowing that you are part of that equation. You're not just something that people either pick or reject. You are
Mhm.
part of that equation, and I think that's super powerful. So,
Yeah.
anything else you'd like to leave them with, Brendan?
I think the most important thing, because I know there are a lot of people struggling with self-esteem and self-worth and all these really dark feelings, especially this year as we're all isolated. And I think as much as you can, just give yourself credit. This has been a hard year. And if all you did was get through it, that is beyond, like, that's above and beyond. So, as you go through your social media and you might see this person did this or whatever, it's like, no, no, that doesn't, everyone's on their own journey and your journey is perfect the way it is. And the most important thing is that you are valuable and you are enough, just as you are, just where you are. And so don't try to be like anyone or anything else. Just be confident in you because you truly have always been enough.
Oh, yes, it's beautiful. And unfollow the people that make you feel like shit, please. Unfollow
Yes,
them.
unfollow
It
them and
doesn't
mute
mean
them.
they're bad. It doesn't mean they are mean. It just means that you feel like shit. And
Yeah,
you should follow
follow
them.
them.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Enjoy your resting time
I
and
will.
can't wait to figure out how you're going to bring it forward in the
In
new year.
2021. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.